The morning started with the sound of ripping plastic. At first, I thought it was just the wind tugging at something outside my house. My place sits right at the edge of the neighborhood, where the HOA rules suddenly become very interested in everything you do. But then I heard it again, long, slow, deliberate, repeat. I stepped onto my porch and froze. Standing beside my truck was the one person everyone in the neighborhood recognized instantly. Karen from the HOA Compliance Committee. Clipboard tucked under her arm, sunglasses perched on her nose like she was inspecting a crime scene. And in her hand were my stickers. Not just one, all of them. She was peeling them off my truck door like she was removing graffiti from a public building. Bright yellow stickers fluttered to the ground around her boots. The ones she'd already ripped off were crumpled in a little pile by the curb. "Excuse me," I called out, walking down the steps slowly. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" She didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, she turned toward me with that smug OA smile, the kind that says, I read the bylaws for fun. "These," she said, holding up a half-torn sticker between two fingers like it was contaminated, a violation of community appearance standards. I stared at her. Violation? Yes, she continued, tapping her clipboard. Section 8(3). No offensive, ugly, or disruptive displays visible from the street. She then looked back at my truck like it had personally insulted her. Frankly, she added, they make the entire neighborhood look terrible. Now, I'll admit the stickers weren't exactly pretty. Big, bold, impossible to ignore. That was the point. But the thing that made my stomach twist wasn't the fact she hated them. It was the fact she was touching them, peeling them off, destroying them. Because those stickers weren't decoration. They weren't jokes. They weren't even mine to remove. A judge had ordered them to be there. But Karen didn't know that. And judging by the way she ripped off the last sticker with a dramatic rip and tossed it onto the pile, like she'd just cleaned up the neighborhood. She was about to learn the hard way. I walked over and looked down at the crumpled stickers scattered on the pavement. Then I looked back at her. "You might want to stop," I said calmly. Karen raised an eyebrow. "Oh," she replied with a smirk. "And why would that be?" I pulled out my phone. "Well," I said, opening a photo of a court document, "because those ugly stickers you just destroyed were placed there by order of a judge." Karen's smirk didn't disappear when I showed her the photo on my phone. If anything, it grew wider. She glanced at the screen for barely half a second before letting out a short laugh like I'd just told the worst joke imaginable. "Oh, please," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "People try that excuse all the time." I blinked. "Excuse?" "Yes," she continued, flipping a page on her clipboard. "Last month someone said their pink flamingos were historic decorations. Before that, a man claimed his broken RV was an art installation." She tapped the clipboard against her palm like she'd already solved the case. You homeowners think you're clever? I looked down at the pile of stickers by her feet, then back at her. You didn't read the document, I said slowly. Karen sighed loudly, the way someone does when they believe they're dealing with an idiot. I don't need to read it, she replied. HOA rules override personal excuses. That's literally the point of the association. Then she reached for the last sticker still clinging to the side of my truck. I stepped forward. Don't. She paused for a split second, but only long enough to look annoyed. Then she ripped it off anyway. Rip. The sound echoed across the quiet street. She crumpled the sticker into a ball and tossed it onto the pile with the others, like she was finishing a chore. There, she said proudly, brushing her hands together. Problem solved. My neighbors had started peeking out by then. A curtain moved across the street. Someone's garage door slowly opened just enough for a face to appear. HOA drama spreads faster than wildfire in this neighborhood. Karen didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. She pulled a small yellow envelope from her clipboard and slapped it onto my windshield. And since the violation existed at the time of inspection, she continued, I'm also issuing a fine. I stared at the paper. $200. For what? I asked. For visual nuisance, she said sweetly. And tampering with neighborhood aesthetics. That's when I laughed. Not loudly. Just enough that Karen's confident smile started to crack. You really should have read that document, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Why? I leaned against my truck and folded my arms. Because those stickers weren't my idea, I told her. She rolled her eyes. Sure they weren't. No. I continued calmly. They were part of a legal settlement. Now the smile faded. Just a little. But Karen quickly recovered and straightened her posture. Well, she said stiffly, that doesn't matter. OA authority still applies. I tilted my head. Even when the court order specifically says no one is allowed to remove them. Karen's pen stopped moving. For the first time since this started, she looked uncertain. But instead of asking questions, she doubled down. Well, she snapped, if you think you're right, you can take it up with the HOA board. I nodded slowly. Oh, I plan to. Then I looked down at the shredded stickers scattered across the pavement. And after that, I added, the judge. E. Karen didn't look worried when I said the word. Judge. In fact, she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not the kind people make when they realize they might have made a mistake. This was the confident, smug laugh of someone who believed they had absolute power. Oh, honey, she said, shaking her head. People threaten lawsuits against the HOA all the time. She tucked the clipboard under her arm and glanced around the street like she was putting on a show for the neighbors who were quietly watching through their windows. It never goes anywhere. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I pulled out my phone again and opened the same photo I had tried to show her earlier. But this time I zoomed in. Then I held it out again. Maybe look a little closer, I said. Karen sighed dramatically like I was wasting her time, but she leaned forward anyway. Her eyes scanned the screen for a second, then 2 seconds, then 3. Her expression changed, just slightly. The smile didn't disappear completely, but it definitely tightened. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked. "That," I said calmly, "is the last page of a settlement agreement." She squinted. "The case number is right there at the top." Karen waved it off. "Anyone can fake paperwork on a phone," she snapped. That's when I did something that finally made her pause. I opened my truck door, reached inside, and pulled out a thick manila folder. The moment she saw it, the confidence in her posture shifted, because this wasn't a screenshot. This was real paperwork. Stamped, signed, official. I flipped the folder open and handed her the top document. She hesitated before taking it. "Go ahead," I said. Karen scanned the first page quickly, clearly expecting to find some loophole or technicality she could use to dismiss it. But the longer she looked, the quieter she got. Her eyes moved line by line, then suddenly stopped halfway down the page. I knew exactly where, because that was the paragraph everyone noticed. The paragraph that explained in the first why the stickers existed in the first place. Karen slowly lowered the paper and looked at me. "Wet," she said. "Yes." "This says..." "I know what it says." She flipped to the next page quickly now, her movements less confident, more rushed. Her finger traced down the text until she reached the part that mattered most. The court order, signed, stamped, and very clear. The judge had ruled that the stickers must remain on the vehicle for a specific period of time as part of the resolution of a previously legal dispute involving the HOA. Karen's mouth opened slightly. "But this doesn't make sense," she muttered. I shrugged. It made perfect sense to the judge. She looked back at the street, then at the pile of torn stickers on the ground, then back at the paperwork in her hands. For the first time since she marched onto my driveway, Karen didn't look powerful anymore. She looked confused, and just a little scared. But instead of apologizing, she made the worst possible decision. She handed the papers back to me and crossed her arms. "Well," she said sharply, "the HOA wasn't informed about any of this." I slipped the folder closed. "That's funny," I replied. "Why?" "Because the HOA," I said slowly, "was the defendant in that case." For a moment, Karen just stared at me like she hadn't heard me correctly. "The defendant," she repeated. I nodded. "The HOA." Her eyes flicked down to the folder in my hands again, then back to the torn stickers scattered across my driveway. The confidence she'd been carrying around all morning was starting to crack. But instead of stepping back, she leaned forward. "That's impossible," she snapped. "If the HOA was involved in a lawsuit like that, the board would know." I shrugged. They did know. Karen crossed her arms tighter. "Well, I'm on the compliance committee," she said sharply. "And I've never heard anything about a judge ordering someone to put ridiculous stickers on their own truck." I couldn't help smiling a little. That's because the stickers weren't punishment for me. She frowned. What? They were punishment for the HOA. Karen blinked like her brain was trying to process a sentence it didn't like. That doesn't make sense. It does when you know what happened last year. Now the neighbors were fully watching. The garage across the street was open halfway, and I could see Mr. Delgado pretending to organize tools while clearly listening to every word. Karen noticed the attention too, and suddenly she looked irritated again. Look, she said, pointing at the shredded stickers on the ground. Whether that paperwork is real or not, those things were a violation of HOA aesthetic standards. You mean the same standards that got the HOA sued in the first place? I asked. Her jaw tightened. That lawsuit had nothing to do with me. You're right, I said calmly. It didn't. She lifted her chin slightly, like she'd just won an argument. But it does now. Karen's eyebrows pulled together. What is that supposed to mean? I pointed toward the ground. At this point, you've destroyed court, ordered compliance markers. She blinked again. Court what? Compliance markers, I repeated. That's the official term in the settlement. Her confidence slipped another inch. But they were stickers, she said weakly. Legally required stickers. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, then glanced down the street again, like she was suddenly aware of how many people were watching this conversation. Then she shook her head hard. No, she said firmly. This is ridiculous. You're twisting legal language. I slowly pulled the settlement document back out of the folder and flipped to the highlighted paragraph. Then I turned it so she could read it again. Her eyes scanned the line and stopped. Right on the sentence that mattered. The part that said the HOA must allow the vehicle to remain displayed with the stickers intact for the full duration of the agreement, and that AUA removal or interference by any HOA representative would constitute a direct violation of the court order. Karen's face strained just a little. That doesn't apply to me, she said quickly. Why not? I didn't know about it. I tilted my head. That's not how court orders work. She stared at the torn pile of stickers again, then at the yellow fine envelope still sitting on my windshield. And suddenly, she looked a lot less certain about everything she'd done in the last 5 minutes. But the real problem for Karen wasn't the paperwork. It was the quiet black camera mounted under my porch light. Because the entire thing, from the first sticker she ripped off to the last one she threw on the ground, had just been recorded. Karen followed my gaze before I even said a word. Her eyes moved slowly from the torn stickers up the side of my house, and then locked onto the small black camera under the porch light. For the first time since she stepped onto my driveway, she went completely still. That camera, she said cautiously. Yes, I replied. Her eyes narrowed. What about it? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I casually pulled my phone out again and tapped a few times on the screen. Then I turned the phone toward her. The video was already playing. Crystal clear footage from the porch camera showed Karen marching up my driveway just minutes earlier, clipboard in hand, already looking irritated. The audio picked up everything: her voice, the ripping sound of the stickers, even the moment she tossed them onto the ground. "Rip." The sound made Karen visibly flinch. "You've been recording this?" she asked. I shrugged. "The camera records everything." "It's motion activated?" She stared at the screen as the video continued playing. In the footage, her voice echoed clearly. "There. Problem solved." Then came the part where she slapped the fine onto my windshield. $200. Karen quickly looked away from the phone. "That doesn't prove anything," she said quickly. "People have cameras all the time." "You're right," I said calmly. I rewound the video 10 seconds and let it play again. This time, the audio caught the exact moment, she said. She didn't need to read the document. Then, the exact moment she ripped the final sticker off the truck, after I warned her not to. Karen's jaw tightened. "That video could be edited," she muttered. "Sure," I said. "If it were a movie." Her eyes flicked back toward the street. Now several neighbors were openly watching. Mrs. Harper was standing on her porch with a cup of coffee, pretending to check her plants while staring directly at us. Karen noticed, and suddenly she lowered her voice. "Listen," she said quietly, stepping a little closer to me. "We can fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "Fix it how?" She gestured toward the ground. "You can just put the stickers back on." I looked at the pile of shredded vinyl pieces. "They're destroyed." "Well, then order new ones," she said quickly. "No one has to know." That made me laugh. Karen didn't. "I'm serious," she whispered sharply. "This doesn't need to become a big issue." I slipped my phone back into my pocket. "You're right," I said. Relief flashed across her face for half a second. Then I added, "It doesn't have to be a big issue." She nodded quickly. "Exactly? It just has to be a Ev's court issue." Her expression froze. "What?" "Well," I continued calmly, "the settlement requires documentation if anyone from the HOA interferes with the stickers." Karen's eyes widened slightly. "And the video," I said, nodding toward the camera, "is pretty clear documentation." She looked back at the lens under the porch light again. This time, she wasn't annoyed. She looked panicked. Because suddenly the problem wasn't a few ugly stickers anymore. The problem was that she had just violated as judge's order on camera in front of half the neighborhood. S. Karen's confidence didn't collapse all at once. It drained slowly, like air leaking out of a balloon. For the first time since she marched onto my driveway with that clipboard, she didn't have a quick response ready. Her eyes kept bouncing between three things: the shredded stickers on the pavement, the camera under my porch light, and the manila folder still in my hand. You're overreacting," she finally said, but her voice didn't sound convincing anymore.
"Am I?"
I asked. Karen looked around the street again. Now the audience wasn't even pretending to hide. Two neighbors had stepped onto the sidewalk, and someone across the road was very obviously recording the scene on their phone. Karen saw that too, and suddenly the situation wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. It was about Azar's public embarrassment every. This doesn't need to go any further, she said quickly, forcing a smile that looked painfully fake. We're reasonable people here. That word, reasonable, made me chuckle. Interesting choice, I said. Her smile twitched. Why? Because the last time the HOA said that, I replied, tapping the folder, we ended up in court. Karen's jaw tightened again. Well, that was before my time on the committee, she said defensively. That's true, I admitted. She nodded, like that somehow solved everything. But court orders don't expire just because the committee changes, I added. Her shoulders stiffened. Karen bent down and picked up one of the torn sticker pieces, turning it over in her fingers like she was hoping it might magically stick back together. Look, she said quietly, I didn't know about any judge. I believe you. Her head snapped up, surprised. You do? Of course, I said, because if you did know, ripping them off would have been an incredibly bad idea. Karen swallowed. But since you didn't know, I continued, it's just a regular bad idea. She dropped the sticker piece back onto the pile. Can't we just forget this happened? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slowly pulled my phone out again and opened the HOA email address I'd saved months ago. Karen noticed instantly. What are you doing? Sending a message. To who? I glanced at her. The HOA board. Her eyes widened. You don't need to do that. Oh, I do, I said calmly. The settlement agreement requires notification if there's interference. Karen took a small step closer. Wait, she said quickly. Let's talk about this first. But I had already attached the video file. The subject line was simple. Was court order violation, documentation attached? Karen's face went pale. You're actually sending that? She asked. I hovered my thumb over the screen. Unless you think the board would prefer hearing about it directly from the judge. She stared at the phone like it was a ticking bomb. Don't, she whispered. I pressed to send. Says. The email whooshed away. Karen stood there, frozen for a few seconds, processing what had just happened. Then, she looked down at the pile of ripped stickers one more time, and quietly said the three words that told me she had finally realized how big the problem was. Oh no. Friday morning arrived with the kind of tension you could slice with a knife. The sun hadn't even hit the rooftops when I was already outside, surveying the driveway where Karen's minions had failed to remove a single sticker properly. Every bright orange square still clung stubbornly to my property, mocking her attempts at authority. I could hear the faint hum of traffic in the distance. But in my little corner of the neighborhood, it felt like the world had shrunk down to this one epic showdown. Every neighbor who had been whispering rumors for months was about to witness the climax of an HOA feud. They didn't fully understand. Yet, I double-checked the cameras, each angle framed perfectly: the porch cam, the street cam, even the neighbor's balcony that gave a clear view of the front yard. Every action Karen took would be documented in high definition. By now, she had become predictably frantic. Her calls to the HOA board were desperate and incoherent, her voice escalating with each failed attempt to justify the theft of my court-ordered stickers. I had learned long ago that panic is the enemy of strategy, and Karen was swimming in it like a goldfish caught in a storm drain. Around HOA 30, the first wave of residents began to arrive, curious and skeptical, clutching their morning coffee and their own questions about HOA governance. Some looked at the still intact stickers, eyebrows raised. Others glanced nervously at the cameras, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Karen's Range Rover rolled into the cul-de-sac precisely on schedule, her expression a mix of fury and confusion, like a general walking onto a battlefield where the enemy had already anticipated every move. By 11:00, I was inside, waiting, reviewing my notes one last time, my pulse steady despite the adrenaline in my veins. The moment Karen stepped onto my property, I was ready. And then it began. Her accusations came first, loud and self-righteous, trying to rewrite months of evidence into some narrative where she was the victim. But the neighbors weren't fooled. As I calmly presented the court order, her face went pale. The cameras captured every twitch, every falter in her voice as she realized the public eye was no longer on her side. Residents started asking questions, louder now, insisting on answers. Each sticker, each document, each piece of proof I laid out systematically dismantled her authority. Karen tried to interrupt, but the rhythm of justice couldn't be broken. By the end of the morning, the HOA president, the committee members, and every resident witnessed a simple truth. You cannot override a federal court order, and you cannot bully an entire neighborhood without consequences. Karen stood frozen, the reality of her actions finally sinking in as the community around me, once intimidated, erupted in collective vindication. That day didn't just restore my stickers, it restored the integrity of the entire neighborhood, leaving Karen with nothing but the weight of her own mistakes.